The snow whipped through the air like 1,000 tiny knives that bitter December night in 1892, blanketing the rugged hills of Silver Ridge, Montana. Each gust howled like a warning, promising isolation that could shatter a man's spirit or force him to confront the desires he'd buried deep. Elijah Brooks stood in his cabin doorway, oil lamp flickering in his callous grip, staring at the figure slumped on his steps. Margaret Ellis, the town's respected widow and schoolteacher, whose quiet grace had stirred whispers among the locals for years, lay there like a ghost from his unspoken dreams. Her heavy coat clung to her form, defiant against the Montana chill. Behind him, his sparse home beckoned, but ahead loomed 3 days of relentless blizzard that could ruin reputations or ignite long-suppressed fires. Elijah, at 35, had sworn an oath to his late mother to preserve himself for a woman of true worth, but as Margaret's hazel eyes flickered open, locking onto his with raw desperation mirroring the storm's fury, that vow suddenly felt like a noose tightening around his soul. The untouched rancher stood at his crossroads. Would his honor shield him, or would it finally shatter under the weight of what he truly craved? Elijah had learned early that some burdens are heavier than iron forged from grief, obligation, and a mother's final plea. At 18, he'd knelt by his ma's bedside in their modest shack near Billings, after his pa fell victim to a mining accident. Abigail Brooks, who'd raised him alone through harsh winters and lean harvests, clutched his hand with fading strength. "Elijah," she rasped, "promise you'll hold out for the right one. Not like your father, chasing skirts in the saloons. Wait for real love." He'd sworn it, a young man's word to the dying, but oaths like that can cage the living. By 35, Elijah towered at 6 feet 3 inches of solid Montana brawn, his hands rough from herding cattle, yet precise enough to thread a needle or drop a coyote at 100 yards with his rifle. His 800-acre ranch was modest but thriving, keeping him occupied from sunup to sundown, too exhausted to dwell on the ache of solitude that pressed like a boulder on his chest. Folks in Silver Ridge dubbed him the untouched rancher in hushed tones, never to his face. They'd watched him nod politely to the barmaids, avert his gaze when the baker's wife leaned in too close, and steer clear of talk that veered toward bedroom matters. What they missed were his sleepless nights, gazing at the rafters, questioning if his ma's words were a safeguard or a sentence. Margaret Ellis knew isolation's sting all too well. 5 years widowed after pneumonia, claimed her husband. She'd taught the town's kids while her own hopes of family faded. At 48, her beauty was the subtle kind that unfolded gradually, like dawn over the Rockies' chestnut hair, streaked with silver, always neatly coiled, making men imagine it cascading loose. Eyes that held stories from late-night novels and postponed ambitions, yet alive with quiet fire. She dwelled in a small annex by the schoolhouse, scraping by on her salary and a deliberate wall against the town's rumor mill. But walls crumble when nature unleashes hell. On December 22nd, 1892, with temperatures plunging like a rock in a river, Margaret had no option. Young Billy Harlan spiked a fever on his family's remote spread, 10 miles out, and the dock was snowed in at Missoula. She saddled up with remedies and hot soup, reaching them as the storm's vanguard hit. Billy pulled through by midday, but the trek back turned deadly, blinding whiteouts, winds screaming like banshees. Her horse, Rusty, battled drifts for 7 miles before stumbling into a concealed ravine, the crack of his leg echoing like doom. Stranded on foot with miles to go and dusk closing in, the next hours pitted her grit against Montana's merciless claim. When Elijah's cabin emerged from the haze, its warm glow seemed a cruel illusion. She dragged herself the final stretch, collapsing at his door, her knock feeble as a whisper. The door creaked open, and she peered up into eyes brimming with unfeigned kindness. Elijah gazed at Silver Ridge's most enigmatic woman and felt a fissure in his core, not his resolve, but the fortress around his heart. Margaret shivered uncontrollably, lips tinged blue against her pallid skin, frost jewels on her lashes. Her sensible dress hugged her contours with unflinching clarity. "Help!" she gasped through clattering teeth. Elijah didn't waver. No decent soul could abandon her to the freeze. He lifted her effortlessly, like a fragile calf, and carried her indoors. As the door shut, sealing them in, both sensed their worlds had irrevocably shifted. The blizzard locked them in for 3 days, a confined space no larger than a barn stall, with only integrity, yearning, and budding temptation as barriers. Storms like this peel back facades, perhaps the erasure of the outside world, the fire's vital warmth, or the brush with mortality that strips away propriety. Elijah's cabin suited one. A lone room with a brick hearth, a slim bed against the wall, a table scarcely fitting two. He draped her sodden coat by the flames and fetched dry garb, his flannel shirt reaching her knees, socks climbing her thighs. "Turn away," she murmured, voice gaining strength in the heat. He faced the wall, but his mind, dormant for decades, ignited, envisioning buttons undone, fabric slipping from porcelain skin. "You can look." He pivoted, breath hitching. Margaret by the fire altered his shirt, accentuating her form, hair tumbling in damp waves. She appeared vulnerable, yet knowing, a woman fully realized. "Thank you," she said plainly. They ate his simple stew quietly, the fire's pop and wind's wail the only chorus. But silence between them brewed peril, fostering glances that lingered, awareness simmering like embers. "The town gossips about you," Margaret ventured, setting her mug down. Elijah flushed. "I suppose they do. They call you the untouched rancher." The label dangled like a challenge. Elijah gripped his cup, jaw set. "What they say ain't my concern." Margaret leaned in, eyes mirroring the blaze. "Is it true?" He could have dodged, but the storm, her nearness, her non-judgmental gaze unlocked his guarded truth. "Promised my ma on her deathbed. Said I'd wait for the right woman. Felt right then." She pondered, then whispered, 35 years, honoring that every day. Her hand covered his, the contact electric. "That makes you the most principled man in Montana, or the loneliest." Elijah met her gaze, heart pounding like a stampede. "Maybe both." Outside, chaos reigned. Inside, a fiercer gale brewed. Day 2 brought no respite but peril in the form of Harlan Graves, riding with menace. Elijah chopped wood out back when hooves crunched snow 3 riders braving the gale. He spotted Harlan's bay stallion through the veil. Harlan ran the Iron Horse Tavern and its shady dealings, bulky at 50 with a mean streak, especially toward Margaret. For months, he'd pursued her relentlessly, gifts, invites, veiled threats that chilled her. "Brooks!" Harlan bellowed. Elijah rounded the corner, rifle in hand, but lowered it. Harlan sneered from horseback, flanked by his thugs, Roy Dalton and Sam Klein. "You got something of mine." "Don't think so, Graves." Through the window, Elijah glimpsed Margaret in his shirt, hair unbound intimate, exposed, igniting a fierce protectiveness. "The teacher. Found her horse lame in the ditch. Tracks lead here. Town's frettin'." Elijah is steadied. She sought refuge. Nothing unchristian about that. Harlan's cackle cut sharply. "Refuge? The untouched rancher snags a widow? A season 1 at that." The slur ignited fury. Elijah felt a primal shift, beyond his vow, pure territorial rage. Apologize or regret it? Or what? Harlan spat, hand twitching to his holster. The air crackled. Elijah's shot felled Sam Klein's arm, spinning him off. The next maimed Roy's hand mid-draw. Harlan's gun cleared leather when Elijah grazed his hat brim. Next one's final. Harlan paled, bravado crumbling before this transformed man. "This ain't done," he snarled, retreating. But Elijah knew it washed evolved from restrained to resolute for her. Margaret waited inside, having witnessed the clash, seeing his metamorphosis from mild to merciless guardian. "You risk death," she said softly. "Some risks are worth it." She faced him, eyes ablaze with unmasked want. "What am I to you, Elijah?" The query bridged their divide. He set the rifle down, hands steadying. "Everything." She approached, barefoot on planks, fire silhouetting her through the shirt. "Your ma's promise," she breathed, inches away. "What if the right one's not what you pictured?" His fingers traced her cheek tenderly. "What if she's been here all along, and fear blinded me?" Her eyes shut at the caress. "I'm no innocent, Elijah." 48, wed before, touched by life and barren of joy. "We've both starved," he countered. "Maybe we're each other's feast. Tears glisten not sorrow, but release. I haven't felt wanted in years. Wondered if I was just a relic." He cradled her face. "Margaret, you're stunning deep as roots, vital as breath." She rose, lips grazing his. "Show me." Their kiss started gently, exploratory, but erupted like a prairie fire. Elijah enveloped her, her sigh unraveling his restraint. What followed was deliberate, Reverent Margaret guiding with care, revealing passion's sanctity, not as his ma envisioned, but profound. In firelight, amid the tempest, Elijah shattered old bonds for new. Margaret found redemption in a man who cherished her wholly. They slumbered entwined, dreams free of emptiness. Dawn broke serene, storm spent. Elijah woke to Margaret on his chest, her hair like satin. He marveled at this intricate soul who'd upended him. She stirred, uncertainty flickering. Regrets. Only that fate waited so long. She smiled radiantly. The storm gone, reality loomed. They dressed lingeringly, resuming roles, but transformed. "Now what?" she asked, gazing at the snowscape. Elijah weighed. "Depends on you." She turned. "No secrets, Elijah. No hiding while feigning normalcy. I've half lived too long." "Good," he affirmed, clasping her hands. "I'll court you openly, before all, and when ready, marry you." Shock lit her face. "Despite the talk?" "Your name." He knelt. "I've wasted years on opinions. Only ours count. Margaret Ellis, will you wed me?" Through joyful tears, yes. 7 months on, in July's warmth, Elijah Brooks wed Margaret Ellis in Silver Ridge's chapel, town a buzzsome celebratory, others prying at the untouched rancher's fall. Harlan Graves skipped town in March, ego bruised, heading west. As Margaret approached in ivory, Elijah shed his final shackle, grasping his ma's intent. Await true love, worth the delay. Their wedding night in the cabin, she murmured, "No more tempests, love just calm." He held her. "Storms come, but we'll endure together." Under Montana's vast sky, thunder echoed distant lineup menace, but affirmation that beauty follows fury. What do you think about Elijah and Margaret's story? Did the age difference bother you, or was breaking the vow justified? Share your take in the comments, stand your ground, and let me know your views.